I'm Doug McKenzie.
And I'm John Ward.
And we're the co-hosts of the ABCs of IBC podcast.
Come join us as we share our unique perspective on the infinite banking concept as the creator, Nelson Nash, intended.
Welcome back, everybody.
Good morning. If you're listening in the morning, we're doing this in the morning. You will be listening to this hopefully on Friday. Friday morning.
How you doing, John?
Or Sunday or Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah.
Any day's fine.
We're out there in the ether of the internet.
We love that you listen, so thank you. Yeah, so today I was thinking after our last episode, we talked about child policies. I thought that we should get into some of the logistics so that there's a lot of outstanding questions, you know, and he'll know I'm talking about him. But one of my prospects thought that, we didn't make it clear, right? And I didn't even think to make it clear, right? But it was bad on us or any insurance agent that doesn't let people know that they can put multiple policies on the same person. Mm-hmm. And somehow that might not come through to people, right? Is that when they're thinking about what they can afford to put on right now, they may delay. So this is a little off the child policy idea, but it happened to be children that we were talking about, and thinking that if they waited, that they would be able to put more coverage on at another time. So that's kind of a little surprising, right? Not that someone would have that thought. It's just that we never even really, I personally have never really thought of it that way, right? Because they already knew, and that's what happens in business sometimes, right? You know stuff so well that you don't even question it, and you don't actually answer to it, right? So,
yeah, those are all really good points. And like you said, I mean, even our last two episodes, really, we've been talking largely about policies on children, and we've talked about it previously. And I know we've mentioned some of the numbers around my son's policy, but to John's point and to his client's point, we've never actually sat down and said, these are the rules surrounding that, and these are some different examples of how this looks. Because, I mean, as we've said on here many times, the younger you are, the more powerful this is. So obviously putting this on the youngest people in your family is a very advantageous thing to do. And I think that we could do a better service to our listeners by explaining how one goes about that. So,
yeah, hopefully, you're always open in these conversations, right? That you don't divert too much or confuse the issue, right? But in some ways, right, because of the idea of infinite banking, and that's really, our focus, right, is to help people build up these, pools of cash to use in their lives. Like they're going to need some major pools of cash if they want to do all these things, major purchases and so forth. And so even when you're older, right, I don't want people to get the wrong idea, because many, as we've said, many think it's too late for them, right? And depending on how old they are, I mean, it could be really late. If you're 80 years old, it's probably too late for you, but you might have grandchildren, right? And you might have children and all that. I mean, you still might have insurable interests, right? And we're gonna get into that. But aside from that, when you're not too old, even when you think like, oh, I wish I had done it I wish my parents set it up for me when I was 3.
Mm-hmm.
I wish, I had started doing this when I was 22, when I first started putting into, some sort of saving somewhere or whatever. But the fact is, your premiums are more expensive for the same coverage the older you get. But that's not a bad thing with infinite banking. because your premiums are building up this cash pool. So it's kind of like them accelerating the amount that somebody can put into a 401k. Is it 50 years old or 55? They start letting you put in more than everybody else, right?
I don't know the answer to that. I
Yeah,
want
it's
to
either
say
50
50,
or
but I could
55.
be wrong about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they let you put in, say, let's say the number right now is 22 or 22.5, and they'll let somebody put in like, you know, at least six or something like that, 6,000 more a year. I don't even remember, right? Because I don't focus on the 401ks. I can look it up. Anybody can look it up. It's pretty easy. But the point is, like, it's kind of the same idea in that your premiums are costing you. I mean, your coverage as you get older takes more premium dollars. But the more premium dollars you have, the bigger cash value, build up you have. I mean, that's just how it works. So it's not that the only way to really benefit from this is to have done it when you're 3. But one of the things is when you're young, you're probably going to be fly right through. There isn't going to be any medical lab work. As long as your doctor's records are good, you don't have any major issues. You're just going to fly right through underwriting.
Mm-hmm.
So you're guaranteed to have this insurance as long as the premiums are paid for the rest of your life, right? And
And they're going to be comparatively small.
yeah, and the premiums are small. I mean, it obviously whoever's funding it, we don't know what their means are at this point. Everybody's got a different situation, as we know. But the fact is, parents, they're trying to make it all happen, right? They're trying to provide, put a roof over, food, and, maybe get them stuff. And they're scrambling, right? They're trying to put them through, camps and all kinds of stuff. And even $3,000 a year, they're like, oh, geez, it's enough. I got all these cars and I got all this other expenses and a house. And yeah, so it's good that it's less expensive, right? Because they might be able to, they can move that into their budget, right? And it's going to make a huge difference, and it's going to be beneficial to the parents many different ways, right? Because the parents own the policy, the grandparents can own the policy too, but they can borrow against it if they need it. But it also is a forced savings for the parents because, hey, they're probably going to fund all these things. They're going to fund maybe the first car. They're going to help them with the first car. They're going to maybe get them through some sort of technology training school or college, or right. And they're going to fund that. So where's the money going to come from? Wouldn't it be nice if you already had a pile of cash sitting there ready for you to leverage? And that's what we're talking about. So I'm long-winded today.
Long-winded John.
Yep, long-winded.
No,
I
good stuff
I
you're
tried to
saying.
take a nap this afternoon, and I had got myself so riled up. I said, I don't think I'm going to sleep. And I really was like, and it was all about life insurance, and I was asking questions and I'm on myself, and I'm looking at putting another policy on myself, and trying to get answers so I'm ready for this call, and I just like, now I've told that I do take a nap when I get a chance, but it's rare. But I did feel I was dragging, and then all of a sudden I had these calls happen just before I was going to lay down, and I was like, I can't even take a nap.
Well, I'm jealous. I can't take a nap ever. So,
Well, it happens eventually. I was like you. Well, other than I could lay down when I was a kid, lay down with the Red Sox game on, and I'd fall asleep to the sound of those boring voices and the
oh
hum
yeah,
of the crowd
yeah,
on the
yeah.
TV. But no, I couldn't. Napping, no, didn't. I remember when my parents tried to get me to nap, couldn't nap then.
Poor
Um,
parents. Yeah, I mean, that's probably my favorite thing ever right now is when our son naps, we get so many things done. So,
Yeah, I totally hear you. And you feel like I gotta move, right? I gotta move fast because this window is pretty short.
oh yeah.
Yep,
Oh yeah.
yep. And then it's full on once they're awake. All right. So what I wanted to start with, if you don't think I've already started, is, first a disclaimer. I'm going to talk about some numbers. I'm using one life insurance company that I use all the time, and these are their guidelines. They could be slightly different with other insurance companies. So, but know that this can be done with a permanent whole life insurance company. Um, but I'm going to start with grandparents can purchase up to $100,000 worth of coverage. If there's one grandchild in the family, they can just put it on them. But if they put the 100,000 and there's two or three or four or more grandchildren, they have to put the coverage on each of them. Right now, the parents could help, I guess, on that too, or what have you. But that's maybe a different story. Um, so the but the fact is, typically, anything over 100,000, the parents have to have a certain amount of coverage.
Hmm.
And the way this carrier works is they call it the least insured parent, which technically could be the only insured parent. There's mom and dad, but say dad's insured, but mom isn't. And we'll use that as an example. And let's say he has, $1 million worth of coverage. Well, they can put up to 100% of what the least covered parent has for coverage, um, up to 500,000. So in that case, they could put 500,000, no problem. But because he has 1 million, they have another sort of guideline, and that is you can put 50% of what the least covered parent has up to 2 million. So if this father has $1 million, then you could put $500,000 coverage on this child, right?
Hmm.
But if it's 100,000 or less, the grandparents can gift it to the grandchildren or to the grandchild, or both. And so there is some room if you go over the 2 million. So again, if the father or the mother had $2 million coverage, then we could put 50% of that, up to 50% of that, on the child. So you could put $1 million coverage on the child. And those are significant policies. If you're putting $1 million on a kid, you're putting in some serious premiums, and the numbers get crazy. I mean, they get really big. And we did talk a little bit about that with your son.
Yeah,
Um,
I want to say his policy at this point has like 1.1 or 1.2 million dollars in death benefit, and it is it's around 3,000 a year in premium, and it's ridiculous what that grows to when you look out, when he's out in his 50s, 60s, 70s. It's pretty crazy. Even by the time he's 20, there's a couple $100,000 of cash value in there.
yeah. So
It's,
with that said, I again, disclaimer, right? The numbers I'm going to talk about are cash value. It's what you can leverage to borrow against. Um, we won't really necessarily talk about the death benefit because we're talking about infinite banking, even though death benefit may be helpful in some way. I don't know, but the net cash value. So I took a 3-year-old male because a male's probably going to be on the higher side of the cost. So if there is a female being insured, her cost is probably going to be slightly less for 100,000 in coverage. Again, I'm not saying you limit it to 100,000. I mean, obviously, talking about the grandparents can gift this, but the parents could put 100,000 on a child too. But if you took a 3-year-old male that's in good health, the premiums are $2,419 a year. And to your point, as an example, when they're 21, there's 63,498 in net cash value if the dividends are being paid like they're being paid now and have been consecutively for over 100 years, as we've said many times. So that seems like in this particular policy, Doug, what I did was I used a product that allows you to pay till they're 75 years old. Now, if it's a grandparent, they can turn over the ownership to the parents. That they can be the fail safe, so that they take over. So they're basically the co-owner of the policy, but they could transfer ownership to it at any time too if they want to.
Yeah, that's one of the nice things about a whole life contract.
Yeah. So that, again, you're saying, okay, you got to pay till you're 75. Well, when you start to see that for small money, this is what's happening to the cash value, right? You might not only be doing this policy, you might be saying, hey, I'm going to add more policies, right? And, the child can take it over once they understand it. Maybe you're teaching them things about how this works. Be an honest banker.
Absolutely.
If you do borrow, you pay it back, all that kind of stuff. And hey, by the time they've got a job, they can take it over. They own it, right? I mean, it's up to the previous owner to decide whether they want to transfer it to them or not, right? And because you can pay this till you're 75 years old, I just want to say that it's 75. They put in 174,000. Let's just round it. It was only 174, 168, but 174,000, and the net cash value is 962,780. So 962,000. And the thing that we try to emphasize is not at some end of the road date in time. So age 75, this thing has been showing cash value for many years, right? When they were, in this case, when they're 35, there's 157,000 in there, right? And they're as long as these premiums are paid, they're insured for life, right? And something might happen, as we've said. So we always keep that in mind. Something happens where they're not insurable, but they have life insurance, and they may have family, they may have children, may have a wife or husband, right? So there is the some income protection.
That fact alone is really, I think, kind of worth it in and of itself. Now that I have experience as an adult, and I've had health issues that have made me uninsurable at points.
Yeah.
And it's nice to know that for our son, he has a policy, and at some point, if he had a health concern down the road, he'd be able to provide protection to, if he had a spouse down the road or children, regardless, it wouldn't matter, and that alone is quite the gift that a family can give to their child or grandchild.
Yeah, that's, without sounding like we're selling, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when we share stories like that, right? That, I know you, and I know that you've had some things come up, and um, what you've shared with me, and we don't have to get into details. It's just that it's going to be a struggle for people, and then you were in a place that you opened up your mind, as you said in the last podcast, that at first you didn't even think that sounds morbid, or sounds, what, putting a policy on a child. But then when you really looked at what the benefits were, but this peace of mind is probably bigger than everything, right? That you literally know if something similar happened to him later in life, that he's got this, right? And I'm pretty sure, knowing his dad and his mom, that he's probably going to have a lot more coverage
Yep.
before this is through, right? Um, and it's not just because, of the uninsurability, because it's about all this other stuff. But yeah, I mean, that really hits home for you, but it hits home knowing you for me. So thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did similar things, and we can do these numbers for you. But I ran a 10-year-old male and a 10-year-old male is just short of 2,800 annual premium, and a 13-year-old male is just short of 3,000 annual premium, so $250 a month. And not making small of it. It's a real opportunity, and the fact is, people are piling their money, if they can into 529 that is kind of trapped in there, right? I mean, that's the financial services industry is going to talk about that. If you've got children, right, they're going to say, hey, why don't you start up a 529 plan, right? I mean, that's I certainly would if I was a financial advisor, if I was a chartered financial planner, I'd probably be saying, yeah, you got to, do you think you want your kids to go to college? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And of course, that all gets exposed to the market, right?
Well, and it's
And
also largely dependent on when you take the money out.
yeah, yeah, you talked about that, right?
Yeah, and I've had people that they haven't outright said it, but you can tell that they think that I'm an irresponsible parent because I don't have a 529 plan
Oh, really?
set up on Scotty. Yeah, and it's like, listen,
I think I know a couple things.
yeah, I mean, he's got plenty of money put away, and yeah, it's largely dependent on when you take out the money. If your kid goes to college and the stock market is in an upturn, then great, or it has been in an upturn. But if you happen to go to college in 2009, that's your first year.
Right,
Well, you might have 30% less in that account than you did the year before.
right.
And there's nothing you can do about that. You're not going to say, well, I'm just going to wait, going to wait out the market and then I'll go to college. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Nobody's going to do that.
Right.
And so and typically most people in 529 plans, I don't know if anybody listening has invested in them, but you're not picking stocks. They don't allow people to do that. You're picking generally like, do you want conservative, aggressive, moderate?
Yeah.
Most people are picking a relatively aggressive allocation because in reality, that time frame of 18 years, assuming they start when the child's born, which most people don't. So a lot of people kind of realize, hey, I should be doing this when the kid has like, you know, 10, 12 years left. You have to kind of pick a
Yeah.
relatively aggressive allocation if you want it to accumulate it all in the span of a decade, which a decade is not very long when you're
Yeah.
talking
Right.
compound interest. And so they're even more prone to those swings that I just talked about.
Yeah,
I don't know. Don't
great
get me
point.
started on this. I just did
No,
this.
no, that's a
I'm not gonna.
great point. I mean, this is why we do this, right? Is because it's a free flowing conversation, and
And
it's
not to mention if your kid doesn't want to go to college.
well, and the money's tied up, right? I mean,
Yep.
you can't access it. And we're talking about cash values at say 21 in this situation or 22 because this doesn't get reported to FAFSA, right? Financial aid forms, right? So this isn't like, hey, you've got that money. You want to look like that's my whole thing, right? Is you want to somehow find out you can look like you have no money, if possible, but really have some. But the fact is that you could take out if you did decide to take some loans. Well, then if they're not charging you the interest during school years, which I'm not sure about that. It's been a while since I've done any of that kind of stuff, but um, you can just turn around and pay it off right away with a policy loan, right? And then when you're paying back into your pool, right? And you're freeing up that collateral again.
Yep.
But when they were 18, there was at 22 there was 68,000 in this case, almost 69. But let's say at 16,000, I mean 16,000, 16 years old, there was almost 31,000. So you know, they got themselves a job and they got to drive, and you're not going to run them around all over the place. And you get them a $5,000 car or $10,000 car. I don't know what they're going to be, and they take some of their pay and they pay back the policy. They pay
Mm-hmm.
back the loan, and now they have access to that money again. And they have the car, right? So it's not like, again, when you get all the way to 75, I mean, you've been accessing this money and in and out, leveraging it for various things. And I always say, and if you had some money, you might decide, hey, I'm pretty good at this. I don't really need a college degree for that. What I needed was a few bucks, and I have a few bucks. And $100,000 coverage again for a 3-year-old, it's 2,400. For a 13-year-old, it's less than 3,000. I mean, it's really beneficial, and it's not going to croak the family, but and it's permanent, so can't beat it. Am I
No.
missing something?
No, I think so. For our listeners, I think that the order of operations is typically, and again, you mentioned some scenarios with the grandparents and gifting, but typically one or more of the parents has to have life insurance in place. Am I correct on saying
Yep.
that?
Yep.
And
Once it's over that 100,000, yeah.
yep, and once that's in place, you can then get a commensurate amount of insurance on the kids, and you went over that kind of relationship there. Um, the other thing that we should mention is that you can't pick and choose which kids to get life insurance on.
Yes. You have to have
So
it
if you
on all.
have 3 children, you have to get equivalent amount of life insurance on all of them.
Yes, and that's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. I'm just going to interject for a second. What is all the children, all the siblings must be treated equally, either by face amount of the life insurance, so like for example 100,000, or the premiums have to be the same, which is
Yep.
interesting, right? Because you think in terms of these cash values. Yes, you want, hey, you started, let's say you had 3 children and they were 3, 10, and 13, right? Obviously you're just getting started, so the 3-year-old's benefiting more than the 10 and the 13-year-old, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
theirs is going to grow more. But the fact is, because you're paying more premiums, in a sense, they do kind of wash out a little bit. It helps to have the higher premiums because it's building up net cash value, which is really what we're talking about here. Then it kind of evens it out a little bit, even though you got started so much later with the other two, right? Well, so much. I say so much. It's really not that. I mean, they're still kids. And hey, getting started when they're kids is great. It's never so much later, like I just said. So
Yep.
can I pull that back? Can you edit that?
Oh man, don't ask me to do that.
Yeah. No,
I'll be up all night. Just,
yeah. And then I'll say, how did it come out?
yeah.
Yeah. So
One thing I want to say, by the way, because I'm like, hey, I want to. How much premium do I actually pay on our son's policy? Because I was listening to the numbers you were saying, and okay, I want to just clarify in case I confuse any of our listeners in what I said before. So the premium on our son's policy is $6,000 a year, not $3,000 a year.
okay.
And that makes more sense with what I see there. So, just a little bit of a real life scenario. I know we've mentioned it before. Do you want me to go through it a little bit?
Yeah. I love it.
So this was started on our son when he was 3. Premium is $6,000 a year. Right now he has, let's see, he's got like $3,200 in cash value. Next premium is due soon. And by the time he's 21, we'll be looking at $132,000 of cash value, about $1.5 million in death benefit. If we go out to, let's say he's 40, right? Kind of, I'm getting there, but to where he might, need money a little bit more. Cash value is $500,000. Death benefits about $2 million. And then if we go out till he's 75, we're looking at around $3.2 million of cash value and about a $4.5 million death benefit. And this is with full premium being paid out similar to you. This one was actually structured a little bit longer, but full premium till 75, and then you can pay a little bit less for a little bit longer. So powerful, right?
Very powerful.
I mean, this is on a similar long-term trajectory to some of our other policies on us that are like over 5 times the amount of premium that because they were started in our 30s.
Right.
And
I just for fun, like what did you say what it would be at 121? Does he have it all the way up to 121?
Yeah, sure. So 120, if he lived to be 121, which I don't know, maybe. I mean,
right. You don't know. He looks pretty healthy to me.
Cash value and death benefit are equivalent at $17.2 million.
Yeah. So, basically you're more than double in premiums at what I was talking about here. But in this case, and I'll just stick with the 3-year-old, it doesn't change that much. But I guess it could be significant. But this idea of living to 121 doesn't mean you die at 121. We don't know what's going to happen, right? And could live to be 125, could whatever. But they cut you a check for this. Like they literally would cut the.
Yeah, they would pay you the death benefit as if you died.
Yeah, they pay you one way or the other, whether you die or you live.
Yeah, but you'd have a pretty good taxable bill at that point because you hadn't died. But I guess if you're 121, who cares, right?
What do you mean taxable bill?
I think if I understand this correctly from what I've read, and I obviously haven't run into this scenario, if you live to be 121, they cut you a check, but it's it's taxable. You would pay that on the gain because you're still alive.
Why would it be? All life insurance's death benefit is tax-free.
You know what? We will investigate this one because now I'm curious.
Yeah.
And we will.
I mean, I've been a beneficiary of life insurance.
No, I know, but it's, if it on this one, if you, the insured, actually lives to be 121, my understanding, and again, I could be wrong, very well could be wrong. My understanding is that they would distribute whatever that death benefit amount is minus any loans, but that it would not be a non-taxable event because you are still living.
Because
Um,
you're the person that's living. That's kind of what the gist of it is, right? Because
yeah,
if you said
yeah,
you die at
that's my
110,
understanding.
they will cut the check to the beneficiary and they don't have to pay taxes. But if you're the one living, they're going to tax it. Yeah, we're going to have to check if
We're
you.
gonna have to check on that.
I don't. Well, I'll put my bet on the fact that you don't.
Let's bet. Uh, we'll bet 5 cents. How about that?
Is there a good pizza place near you? No. Yeah. So for fun with this, again, 3-year-old boy gets insurance from, say, his grandparent or grandparents, and lives to be 121. Put in 100, just over 174,000 in premiums. It turns into over 4.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
The fact is, we say the death benefit, but the cash value is 4 point. It's the same number, right? So the cash value is built up to be over 4.5 million for less than 175,000 in premium. You haven't been paying premiums. How many years is that? 46 years. You haven't even paid anything into it. And of course, we're saying 121 just for fun, but I mean, there's definitely going to be many people that are doing well, feeling good at 90, right?
Oh yeah, I have so many of like my family tends to live longish, and we have people that are doing very well in our family that are late 80s, early 90s. Same with my wife's family, and you have to imagine that that's likely going to improve with time. Um, so yeah, they become extremely significant, and I mean, there's really no end to the ways that you could look at these benefits, but to be old and to not have to worry about money, what a gift.
Yeah,
um,
that's true gift. And the fact is, like we've said before, how do you really quantify it? Depends on how people use the policy and leverage the collateral throughout their lives. But this, we're talking about what the insurance company is going to pay out, right? With death benefit. But the fact is, you could have millions that was generated over the years based off of having access to this capital.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
and again, it's not all about money, but what we're saying is you're thinking about money, you're doing these other things, and you know, I was at a Christmas party yesterday, and this guy, he says, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, "I'm a life insurance agent." And he's got a woman on each side of him sitting on a couch. And I said, "Do you want to talk to me?" Who wants to talk to a life insurance agent at a Christmas party? But he got up. He was quite a talker, and he wanted to say, when I meet young people, because he was like 72. When I meet young people, I tell them, you should save 10%, and you should put it into a mutual fund, or put it into your 401k, or and again, that's people's choice, but we've got so many people in the world that give financial advice, and they're qualified in some way because they have their opinion and they should be able to do right. But I'm like, I love the idea, right, that you're saying save some money, but you do know that you're asking them to put it into the risk pool, right? When you said save, we want really low risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just given that advice, yeah, if you save 10%, where are you going to put it? And that's what we're trying to say. There's another place to put it, and to not have it at quite the same level of risk, right? And all the great stuff. Geez, I'll just go on and on. Yeah.
It is. I mean, it is easy to talk about this because it's just so powerful, especially once you've seen it in action. But I mean, I hope that we've kind of provided a little bit of guidance and, direction on how to go about this. I mean, the reality is that the parents generally need to have some form of life insurance in place, and that's to ensure that, premiums can be paid if something happens to them. And then it doesn't have to be whole life insurance, though. It could be term insurance. And there are people that opt to do that, to put term insurance on themselves and, get whole life insurance on the kids. There's really a lot of different ways that this can be implemented. We're just kind of providing a little bit of an overview on some of the regulations, the rules, some ideas, and then really it depends on everybody's situations. And you can sit down with someone like John or I or someone else and go through your specific situation. And that's where it pays to have a good professional that can kind of analyze those things and provide a good strategy. So.
Yeah. And I'll try to keep this really brief because we've gone kind of long tonight or today. I just, the idea that, the parents can start with term. The great thing is if it's a convertible policy, meaning you can convert it into a permanent, so then you can do the infinite banking, right? Which, you've worked with some people that way. So that's definitely a strategy, right? Is, let's get started. Right. And let's have a plan. You don't have to do everything today, but getting started gives you a lot of options, right? Because you can convert it and start building up that cash value. We'll probably do another episode on, we did one on converting, but I'm not sure we covered everything. I guess I'll have to listen to that podcast again, because I always feel like, did we cover everything? So.
Yeah, that was an earlier episode, but yeah. Any suggestions that you have or any other questions that you have, please let us know. We'd be happy to talk about them. And we'll come back to you in the next episode or two with who won the bet on that one.
Oh, here's another one then. If you, I don't believe, unless there's something surprising to me, you would, these children don't need to get, like the parents, if they get in a policy in some cases not, but typically they're doing, a cup of urine and 1 vial of blood. They have to do the lab work and have that checked along with all these medical questions or health related questions. But the children will have questions, asked to the parents, regardless of whether the parents put in the policy or the grandparents are put in the policy. The parents have to answer the questions, right? Mm-hmm. But the children just pretty much move right through underwriting unless something pops up in their record from, their youth, right? That they have a condition, and maybe it's a condition that after a year they might review it, right? And, they might not want to cover them right away, but then, hey, let's just keep an eye on this, and then it's fine. And then they'll insure them, but, I want to make that a point, because I think that came up with somebody once with me too, is they were like, oh, good to know that, because geez, they don't want the kids getting poked with needles and that kind of thing. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All righty. I think that is it.
We've beat the horse, I think, today.
Yeah, I'm in a talkative mood, even though I'm a little sleepy.
No, I think it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Son. Yep. Reach out if we can answer any questions you have.
Until next week.
Yep.
Yes, we do.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the ABCs of IBC.
If you enjoyed listening, please hit subscribe and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen. It really helps. See you next week.
Bye.